Outer Orange.
Ever since Meep got unrestricted in Japan, I knew the time would come where we would be back on Melody. So today we're gonna talk about Melody. I took this deck recently to Houston and I took it to Rosemont. Performed pretty well, honestly. I placed 12th both times with my team on both vpremium events, so kind of crazy how that happened, exactly the same. But you guys know me, I've made a lot of Melody profiles, so I've been kind of a fan of this deck for a while. I just think it's a really pretty deck. But aside from it being pretty, it's actually also really strong. So we're gonna go down to business. We're gonna talk about it today. I'm gonna give you guys the works of pretty much the updated version of this deck with the Meep unrestricted, and I tested the living bananas out of this deck because vpremium is still one of my favorite formats. So I spent a lot of time trying to make sure that I took the exact deck that I wanted to take and perform the best with. So we're gonna go ahead and get that going today. Before I get started, let's go ahead and talk about our sleeves. So this time I'm actually using the Dragon Shield sleeves. I've been recently absolutely obsessed with white bordered sleeves. I think they look so good on a card. It's either black or white. I think they're my favorite. Silver is definitely not my favorite, but I absolutely love. Recently I also bought some Mana Moon sleeves that have like a maroon red. Those look really nice too, but they're sadly not the perfect fit for Vanguard sleeves, and they're a little bigger, and because of that they're not like as legal. But anyway, so I've been using these. I also love the look of the dragon. I'm not a big dragon person, but I will say in here I can vibe with this. I can vibe with this, but it's a really rare vibe. It's a really rare one. So that's those. That's for the sleeves. And then deck box for the Ava I use the pink one, but for Melody I actually use the blue one, which is kind of funny because, you know, it does match the whole theme of Bermuda. This is the Dink Ritual deck box. It's one of my favorites as well. I don't like the white on blue as much as like the pink on black, but I still really like this deck box as well. It's very nice to touch, very nice to feel, and yeah, that's the deck box. So going back to the cards, let's go ahead and get started. So this is Star on the Stage Pawn. This is the boss unit. This is the card that you want to essentially do your entire engine. If you don't draw into this card or see this card fast enough, you will actually lose the game. There's literally no shot you're going to win unless you draw into this. So her effect says, when during your main phase and battle phase, she copies all effects in Soul and in Rearguard that are all Melody unit focused. And then her second ability says, you can cast put a Rearguard of Melody's card name into your Soul to draw a card, and if your opponent's grade or greater, you can get an imaginary gift. So essentially you can get a gift off of her ride, and you can get a secondary gift. It could be Excel or Protect or Force. So usually sometimes you have to make a meta call depending on the deck you're facing. Sometimes you don't always want to go Excel 2. It may be super tempting to go Excel 2, but sometimes you don't want to always go Excel 2. You'll rarely go Protect, but you might have some moments where you may go Force 2 just to make bigger pressure columns, but it's super rare. 9 out of 10 times you'll probably go Excel 2. But basically this deck copies all effects of all your grade 3 Rearguards and one of your grade 2s, and basically you just pop off like crazy, get really huge numbers, and it just goes insane. And then we recently got a card unrestricted called Meep, which made this deck pretty much accelerate a lot better. It's pretty much the old deck now from like a couple years back, and now it's just at peak because it is one of the strongest deck in the format. So let's go into all the threes. That's the beginning of our threes. It's Cannon. So this is Cannon. This is your WinCon. You absolutely need to find this card. I used to run this card like 2 copies or some stuff like that. I don't know why I ever did that. 4 is mandatory. Unless you feel like the meta is shifting so much where you don't need 4. I think you always need 4. The minute you open this card, you already know you're winning the game, as long as you have right targets, like a 1 and a 2 essentially, and of course Pawn herself. This card accelerates the deck so much on top of the guard restrict it has. It's insane. Her ability pretty much says, when placed, you may choose to soul charge, and then Vanguard you can soul blast 3 and force your opponent to guard with 2 cards till the end of turn. Both insanely good skills, by the way, because all numbers are super high, and then you have multiple attacks, so it just gets very lethal. Pretty much shreds your opponent's hand really quickly. So this card is your win con. You need to see this card. If you don't see this card, you would pretty much be doing nothing, because your soul gets so small and so tight with cards that you want in soul that you will be struggling to maintain the soul. And other cards soul blast too, so you definitely want to see this card on top of the fact that guard trick's insane, and you'll also find Melody cards faster because of soul charging. So this is like a mandatory 4 of. I don't see any other feature where that changes, but you never know. Next, I run Fina. I ran her at 2, and then someone told me to run her at 3, so I put her back at 3. She's pretty much a shield girl. If she's on the border at Soul, all your Melody units get plus 10k shield. Specifically on board, so when you intercept with them, they pretty much stack off each other. So if you have 1, you get 10k. If you have 2, you get 20k. If you have 3, you get 30k. And yes, it stacks on all your front row rear guards, so if you can intercept with them for pretty much 30k shields. And it's really great. That's all she really does. Next, we have Sonata. This is definitely another mandatory 4 of. You really need to see this card. For a while, I was kind of coping with 3, hoping I'd get away with 3, but you definitely need 4. Her basic effect says, on rearguard Vanguard, every Melody unit gets 5k. The second skill is very important. It says Counterblast, Soul Blast, keep revealing until you see a Melody unit called to the board. This is super important because you really want to find Melody cards, and sometimes if stuff gets retired, This is your only out, and sometimes if you're not finding cannon in time, maybe she'll find you a cannon, or she'll find you something else that's of use. It is like a lottery, so you don't know what you'll find, but sometimes it's better to have this than not. If you don't have one in soul, it's really hard sometimes. You'll usually have 2 CB, 1 CB for pawn and 1 CB for this. So usually pawn's effect, do your thing, call some cards, and then use her effect to then get another card, so that way you don't have to use your hand as much. So it's actually very useful. Very, very strong card. Last but not least, we have, out of the 3s anyway, we have Caro. I used to run this at 4, and I had the Fina at 3, and then Maxime Solom yelled at me, so now she's at 3. Basically, this card gives you boost and also 5k power, essentially, so she's just power and boost. So essentially, she just stacks really well with Sonata, and then she gives all your melody boost, which means everything just stacks for super big numbers. And then next we have, she also has a Vanguard effect, but you never want to use it. It pretty much says when placed Soul Blast to search your deck for a copy of yourself and add to hand. You're never going to use that. It's a one place ability. It's never going to happen. Anyway, so next we have Sonata, the grade 2 version. Now this card is the only other card that after this, no other cards can be copied anymore. These can copy with the pawn ability as well. Well, that's it after that. No other cards that we'll be seeing will be copying off of each other. So basically when she attacks Vanguard, she gets an additional 5k. That's it. That's pretty much the effect. So when your front row, when it attacks Vanguard, it will get the additional 5k on top of the Caro 5k, on top of the Sonata 5k, on top of your board just being crazy. It all stacks, by the way. So these will stack with the grade 3 Sonatas. And if they're in the back boosting, they'll also stack with the Caro as well. So they just get kind of nuts. Well, the 5k won't, but the 5k off Caro will. So they just get really big though. Pretty much a beater. You can call them out early, smack face, and you can even call board like this early on. And yes, this can happen. It's super rare, but it can happen. Pretty much everything's attacking for plus 15 since they all stack off each other. Next, I run 2 of these, and yes, I do run exactly 6 grade 2s. This is it on the grade 2s. I run 2 of these. These are just protectors. They're really just here to as slots for something to find, so I can ride a 2. I don't really care what the 2 is. I will say the shield does come up, so that's another reason why I run these. These are shield. She gets 10k extra shield when you guard with her, which makes her 15. And then if you're intercept with her, so intercepting with her with the other Fina effect active, she gets really chunky. Does come up. I will say it's not my favorite card in the deck. This could easily be other cards as well, but she's definitely not bad. You can run the grade 2 soul charging cannon version if you want, but it's high roll. It's a little weird. I think this is better. Most run 7 grade 2s. I chose to run 6 because I think the grade 1 slot is just super important, which is what we're going to get into now. Starting with, of course, Meep. So Meep got restricted. Her ability is pretty simple. If you and your opponent are the same grade, you still blast. Otherwise, you counter blast. Top 7, 2 melody cards, 1 to soul, 1 to hand. That's her entire effect. But it's super important because you're setting up your soul, you're deck thinning 2 cards, and you're getting cards to hand. So you're finding pawn faster. You're finding everything. You're pretty much your whole engine. This whole engine right here. You're finding the whole engine faster. Pretty much, it just makes the deck just consistent, or more consistent than it was prior, because it used to be just 1. I think this is just an insane card. The fact that you get soul blast for effect is big, but again, because you're soul blasting, you got to keep in mind of what you're soul blasting. So just keep in mind, like, you don't want to, like, that's why cannon is super important. A lot of cards soul blast, including cannon herself. So that's pretty much what this card does. You pretty much always want to find this. This is a going second card, however, so just something to keep in mind. If you have to play into this going first, you don't usually want to ride this, and you usually want to avoid riding this at all costs. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but you don't want to miss out on this effect at all. This effect is so big, especially if you're bricking, that it's not even funny. So next, I run 3 Sierra. You might be wondering why I only run 3. Well, I don't think this card's very good. I don't think it's bad either, but let me put it this way. In this deck specifically, I think it's okay. In other decks, this could be a very cracked card or a very crappy, I don't know, it's kind of between. It has its moments because it has 2 effects on it, both of which are really good. The first effect says if someone tries to attack into this column, essentially, like if you have something like this and they try to attack into this, they can't. So they have to force it to give you damage, which is actually very important because Melody wants damage. And you don't have any countercharging in the deck, so it doesn't exist, and you can play around like that knowing that, so that's important. The next effect says Soul Blast reveal grade 3, look at top 7 for Melody, add to hand. That's also really big because, like I said, I don't run that many grade 2s, so for me personally, this card is actually very important. But I run it at 3 because I need this. She's still not a ride target. This is my ride target. This is not a ride target. She's rear guard only. This is a problem. I don't want to hard ride into this, and I don't want to hard ride into this going first. So when I'm going first, I don't want to ride into either of these cards. Actually, a card I want to ride into is something like this. Is Sedna. So I actually have Sedna instead. I have 1 copy for her, and then the other copy is one of the grade 2s. That's essentially where she is fulfilling the slot, which makes me have exactly 9 grade 1s, and I think the grade 1s really carry this deck. So I chose Sedna. I used to run actually Coral, and you guys know this because I actually made a Coral deck profile. Well, I made a Melody profile, but I was running Coral cards, specifically the grade 1, because I think Coral fulfills an insanely strong engine early. She has an off-place ability on Vanguard where you can draw a card, put a card to soul, essentially. But the reason why I'm running Sedna over Coral is actually because of Heal Guardians. I think this is the only card that can find Heal Guardians. And there are games where you draw into every grade 3 in your deck and you have no shield whatsoever. It does happen, and the only saving grace you'll have in those situations is usually a Heal Guardian. So that's actually why I run this. The second reason why I run this is because this is the best for going first ride target you have. You want to call that, you want to ride this, and then next turn when your opponent gives you the damage, you want to use the counterboss effect for this. You do not want to ride this if you're going first. Of course, you'd rather go first, so that way you're in the advantage of just going first. But going first, this deck is not as strong as going second. However, if you're going second, you are increasing the chances of dying because you have so many grade 3s, so you still want to go first, but you don't want to ride this and you don't want to ride Meep, so you want to ride this. So I read these 2 extra high roll cards essentially to just get there faster. I've even thought about running 3 Sedna and running 2 Sierra, but because I'm running so little grade 2s, I didn't want to risk getting screwed over that badly. Chose to run it like this, and so I don't like increase my G assisting on 2. By the way, out of all the matches I've played, this is Houston and Rosemont, I never GSS on a grade 2, but I did GSS on grade 1, which is hilarious because even my teammate, he was expecting me to GSS on grade 2. I never GSS on a grade 2, but I did. It's funny how it happened with how my ratios are. I somehow, and I kid you not, I always found this card. It was always through Mulligan. It was always, every single game I played, I had this card in my hand. I'm not even exaggerating. I don't know what it is about this card, but I never missed it. I don't know why that card loves me so much, but it does. I mean, long story short, this is how I run it. I actually think this is extremely peak. I think this is how most people should be running it. They could cut back one of these just to have the normal grade 2 ratio, but I think this is just the most ideal way. This deck goes so strong if you open up the grade 1s. If you open up the grade 1s, this deck's like insane. Like there's nothing really stopping you from winning the game aside from like whiffing on your searches. If you whiff on your searches, then that's just bad luck at that point because you have so many shots. There's all this entire stack right here. This whole stack is basically targets for all your grade 1s, with the exception of this card Sedna, because she can't search the 2s. But aside from that, this whole stack is searchable. That is literally like majority of your deck. This is like basically your deck. Like that is a lot of deck to not whiff on essentially. So because of that, you usually won't whiff. So and because of that, the grade 1s just carry. So usually the grade 1s won't whiff, and they just carry that hard. Also, this can search out basically like 15 grade 3 targets, and that's including the Heal Guardians too, by the way. So this will usually not whiff either. So long story short, these carry your whole deck. So if you find these, you'll usually win the game. So I think these are just insanely strong. So I feel like your grade 1 slot should be very powerful. Let's go into triggers. So of course we're running the 4 Heal Guardians. Sedna can search them. Again, it's kind of a saving grace for you sometimes, so you definitely want to see these. I don't think I need to explain much else. If your opponent tries to deny you, I don't know why they would, but you can always just pop it down for the extra Counterblast. You could heal out or something. Maybe they'll swing to a rear guard. I don't know. Unless you have Sierra on the board, then they can't. But it's a weird situation, but maybe it happens. And then for Sentinels, I actually run the 3-1 split. You can choose to run the extra draw Sentinel. I don't, because I'm scared of deck out, actually. I'm so scared of deck out that there's been situations where I ran all 4 crits just because I don't want to deck out. And if I know exactly how many the cards in my deck, I'll know exactly where to stop in terms of soul charging. I'll never have to worry about the deck out. But PGs are super, super, super important. Like, you kind of want perfect guards too. So I wish I could run more crits, but I will say there's some matchups where you really need the PG and you really want to see at least 2s in some matchups. So because of that, I have the 3-1 split, but you can do you. It's not the end of the world. But yeah, 3-1 split. Also 30k shield goes crazy sometimes. Well, and then of course we have the 4 crits, and they're shiny, yes, and then we have 4 more crits on top of that are also shiny, and I'm so happy I was able to obtain these. I don't think you all understand. So pretty much 9 crits total, 3 draws, and then heals after that. So that's basically it. You definitely want crits. Crits really carry this deck like a lot. You have a very, if you your opponent will usually say no guard to Van because it's usually the smallest. Or it's really rare when they hard guard it. I don't really know why. It kind of blows my mind, but especially because they're usually at early damage, so they'll usually say no guard to Van. Quicker for game can really solidify it. It goes kind of crazy, and yeah, that's pretty much that. And then we have the starter, so you can make this any starter you want it to be. If you're running the Coral package, then you have to have the Coral starter. Otherwise, you can put any starter you want. And then let's see, you need a quick shield. That's very important. Quick shield goes crazy. And then we, of course, want to run markers. So the markers so normal markers, like without all the extra stuff. So normal markers, you usually go Force 2. Force 2 is always the way. You never go Force 1. The numbers are already really huge. I can't see a future or time frame unless you there's never a reason to go Force 1, long story short. However, for your second marker, which will usually be Excel 2, Protect 1, or protect 2 on a rare occasion, or another force 2 marker. You usually, for your second marker, when you're already when your points are already grade 3, you'll usually want to pick excel 2. Sometimes on a rare occasion you may want to pick one or the other of these. You can actually stack this on one of your girls and then the intercept will be even higher. It can come up, but it's super rare. This is like a 9 out of, this will like almost always happen. Sometimes if you think you need the perfect guard, sometimes you can pick this up if you're going into a slower game. And then last but not least, you can actually grab another force 2 marker to make your rear guard columns even bigger, to make everything just like pretty much like I have to guard this or die. And the numbers get so high, like they get in the 80s and the 90s, that when you're swinging for 90k for 2 damage, and if your opponent doesn't have a PG, they have to hard guard it or they have to take it unless they're at low damage. And usually, especially with the guard strict active where they have to PG it anyway, they're actually dropping 3 cards essentially for the perfect guard. So that's another really painful situation to be in, and because of that, they're like they're in a really bad spot. So because of those situations, sometimes you on a very rare occasion might go into another force 2 marker. Usually excels the way because typically they'll be in a weird interval where they're at 4 damage by the time you hit the excel marker. And what happens is if you just keep stacking more excel markers, the numbers just get really big. Even like just the normal, like you'll call like this girl to like one of these markers and she'll be swinging for 50. And that's 50 on excel marker. If you have 2 of those, that's double 50 on excel marker. Like it's 1 damage each, but still it's still 50. And they still have to guard it, and they still have to guard the other ones too. So ideally, usually this is the way. All of the melody profiles I've made, this is probably the best one. I will admit, I think in terms of, because I spent the most time of it. A lot of times when I made melody profiles in the past, I just made it for fun. This time I actually made it with a competitive scope in mind. I planned to win. I will say my luck in Rosemont was not as nice to me. I had a lot of bricky games. I had a game where I had to write Sonata against someone who couldn't find Jewel Knight Ashley, reverse Ashley, and he was literally calling over his grade 1s trying to find it, and he was bricking super hard, and I somehow I bricked harder than him because I never saw pawn. So I wrote Sonata and I lost the game. And that's, keep in mind, the opponent had a 2-card hand like the entire game. Like literally the entire game he had a 2-card hand. Like all he had was his drive checks, and I still lost because like I couldn't find pawn in time. So long story short, the deck went a little against me. I definitely had games where I G-assisted that cost me the game. Just like, you know, just weird stuff happened. But overall, the deck still performed. In Houston, the deck performed insanely strong. When it mattered, the deck was performing. With the games that mattered, I did win. So the deck definitely did its thing. But you know, it happens. It happens. Deck is still strong. I will say it's a little high roll. So if you're into high roll, this might be the deck for you. But just keep in mind, it does high roll and it can go against you. And sometimes you get your ass carried. That's just how it is. But yeah, guys, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Peace out. Das vidanya. Yeah, if you want to compete and you're entering Springfest, I will say if you want to enter with this, I highly recommend it. This has made me really enjoy V. It's mainly because of this deck. This deck has been actually really fun to play. I really could tell you why. I just like the lottery machine. It's just been a blast. And I actually have been having a great time playing V. Aside from G-assisting, which does suck, I've been having a great time playing this deck and enjoying V format. I know a lot of people don't feel the same way, so this is definitely a me thing. I'm definitely in the minority, and that's perfectly fine. I will take my minority life. Yeah, bye guys. Bye guys. Enjoy your fishes. If you choose to play this deck, I highly recommend it. It's been highly tested. So yeah, peace out. Hope you guys enjoy the video. I hope you guys enjoy the subscribe. Don't forget to do that. If you need some cards from 50cards.shop, don't forget to do that. Code orange, all that kind of fun stuff. Yeah, bye guys. Bye guys.